Student learning objectives are a process for teachers to be able to set long-term goals to measure each of their individual students' performance over a long period of time.
A student learning objective is a focused educational tool in my mind. It focuses my teaching. It kind of sets a purpose for my work, especially for that interval instruction. And it allows me to target instruction on very essential skills.
It's a structure for goal setting within the school and within my classroom. It lets me set a goal for my students, and it lets me kind of have an assessment schedule. I'm a very usually unstructured person. I kind of will go off one way to another, and it really gives me a framework for how I want to lead my objective and eventually, get the positive outcome that I want.
It has forced me to stop looking at my kids as groups and just blocks of children, and realize that each kid has a certain target, a certain goal, and therefore they have certain needs that are, make them separate from others, and it's really just helped me hone in on those differences and teach them better.
You're really focusing on specific students and their specific goals. So each student might have a different goal from each other that's based on their needs.
I think it's taken the focus off of making every student proficient and really made my teaching be about allowing each student to be successful in having some form of growth. So it helps me to pinpoint those individual areas that those students need more support, and I am able to streamline my instruction to help each student receive that growth rather than trying to make my entire class receive a level of proficiency.
Well, one thing, I used to hate data. I used to hate, looking at numbers, and I'd never thought of myself as an extremely logical person. But it's kind of, I don't want to use the word fun, but it's certainly, it's engaging. I mean, once you really get down into it and looking at, what kid is where, I mean, you can't help but really getting into it.
It kind of lets me focus on how this data affects individual students, and I can look and I can go back to my data from the beginning of the year and go, okay, Johnny, you were supposed to be reaching this level at this point. You're not there right now. What can I do, and what can we do together outside of class time, during our class time, during our mentoring time, and our outside study time to improve your scores? How can I change my teaching strategies? Is there something that I'm doing wrong in the process? So it's very much a good process for evaluation and self-reflection.
The process is a pretty detailed system. We start in the fall with helping the teachers to develop their SLOs, providing them with data if they don't have the necessary student data. If they don't have access to it, then we're working through the process to get them some quality information about each one of their individual students. Then we're sitting down trying to figure out what is the most important things for the teachers to measure. Typically they will work within their PLCs, and possibly with their instructional coaches or an administrator providing some input and helping them to develop their SLO. What we've done in the past is the teachers have sent them to me electronically, and we've done a communication means of me providing feedback directly into their documents, and we've done a lot of electronic exchanges where I've asked questions, or we're using a checklist and letting them know the items that may be missing, and then they resubmit it and we work through that process. And then finally we'll have an approval. Once the approval is made, then we just continue on with live teaching is taking place.
It's something we were already doing, but you're looking at it a little bit more intensely. There's definitely more check-ins. One of the SLOs that I wrote this year had to do with an assessment that we were already using for years, and we would test them at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And we just thought using curriculum that we had written that we would see the increases in growth in the assessment. But what we're finding is now that it's an SLO and we're looking at it more intensely, we're progress monitoring, we're seeing that we're putting a little bit more into what our teaching to show the growth quicker and to make sure that the kids are carrying it on.
we have a mid-year check-in for us to sit down with the teacher and kind of get an idea of where they're at, see if there's additional supports that they need or that their students need in order for them to hit their goal. And at the end of the interval instruction typically lines right in with the end of the summative evaluation cycle. We have a final meeting and we talk about how many of their kids met their growth target, did the teacher hit their goal, and then how that impacted their evaluation as a whole.
I believe that it has opened up lines of communication that may not have always been there. I know I speak quite oftenly with our ELE teachers, our math teachers, our science teachers, a lot more than perhaps normal, just because it's very easy for you to get kind of in your own box and in your own world. And really having those dialogues about student achievement that are very specific to that student open up those lines of communication.
You can't do this alone. It's definitely easier to do with your group. In our building, in our district, we utilize the PLC model where teachers collaborate and work together. So we come up with a common goal that we want to measure as a grade level, and we look at assessments that we want to use. We share the best practices that each one of us utilizes to help increase the potential of our students' growth, and give advice to each other. We're analyzing the data from those assessments and then hopefully sharing all of our successes at the end.
I think now the students recognize that they have a target to meet. They are not, they're not unaware of this process, and they know that they have been given a target to meet, and we have frequent checks, and they're able to evaluate their progress toward that goal as well.
I think the biggest difference is that the students are aware of what they're being measured on. This goes hand in hand with our district's initiative to push the assessment literacy, and kids are more aware of the objectives in general. So the children are definitely more invested in their own learning, which is very important.
It's difficult if you make it a one-person job, so you have to develop some capacity within some other members of your staff to fully understand the process so they can support each other.
I think that it makes your SLO even better if you have a grade level data team where you're setting the same goals. Your targets might be different because you have a different group of students, but you're setting the same goals, you're using the same assessments, you're focused on the same type of progress monitoring, and there's more heads and more minds to bounce ideas around and to troubleshoot and to get where you need to be by the end of the instruction period.
It's not as much of a challenge as what people would like to tell you that it is. It's something that is very, again, like I've said, it's something that can keep you focused. It's something that is extremely measurable, and I like to keep track of where my students are on a regular basis. I like to check, I do a weekly check on people's grades and what we've done in our common assessments, what we've done in our formative and summative assessments throughout, and it gives me more of just this straight line that I can follow. I don't divert from this line at all.
A student learning objective is, in my mind, the fairest way of evaluating a teacher's influence on student outcomes.